Hey, Enneagram friend. This is Abby Rodriguez, your certified and IEA accredited Enneagram teacher and coach. And today we are talking all about stress. So in this next series, we're going to look at the stress response for each of the 9 types. And there was an initial introduction episode to this series. So if you haven't listened to that yet, go back and listen to that first and then come back to this number. The audio for these episodes is taken from the Growth and Self-Care Workshop audio that's available for purchase for only $20 on my website if you want to learn more. This episode is all about the stress response for type 1. When ones experience stress, first, they exhibit the unhelpful tendencies in their own type structure, just like the rest of us. And so it's almost like the gifts of type 1, they become imbalanced or excessive. And so those tendencies really show up as now being unhelpful. When ones experience stress and kind of dip down into the lower numbers, the lower levels of their number, that unhealthy range below average, what that stress looks like for them is that they become critical. They become critical of themselves, beating themselves up for not meeting standards or expectations. But they also become critical of others. Sometimes how much they're critical of themselves versus others is dependent on their subtype, but some range of being critical. In that space, when they experience stress, ones also try to fix things. They try to clean up things, order things, improve things. Whatever is broken or out of place or messed up, the stress response is to try to fix it. Sometimes, though, those things are people that feel like they're out of place or not doing their best or not doing what they should be. And people don't really like to be fixed. And so that can cause a lot of problems in relationship with your kiddos or with your spouse, with your friends, your coworkers. And a lot of times that's really fueled by your stress. If you're just feeling stressed, that's why you're trying to fix things. In this space, when type 1s are experiencing stress in their own type structure, they also can become really irritated, really impatient, and over a sustained period of time, that can show up as really just being resentful of others and how they are not meeting expectations or standards or whatever it might be. If the type 1 experiences so much stress or sometimes even just a certain type of stress that they get pushed over into their stress number, type 1s will naturally move and take on the tendencies to type 4. So it's not that they actually become a 4. When I say move, it's just kind of, imagining yourself moving along the lines, those internal lines that connect you in the diagram. But for type 1s, they take on the characteristics of type 4. If they're not cognizant of this move, and it's almost like they get pushed across the diagram to their stress number, they're going to naturally take on the lower side of type 4. So what that looks like for the 1 is that they long to be free. They long to be free of responsibilities. They might daydream about not having to do anything or sometimes even all of the work being done, the project being completed, quitting their job, whatever it might be, but just this longing for them to be free of responsibility and the roles that they play and what's expected of them. In this space, they also feel like no one understands. No one understands how hard they work, how much they sacrifice, and there's really this anger that's created for them, and it can cause this feeling of melancholy or sometimes even moodiness of no one gets how hard I work and no one cares and no one is pulling their weight and all of this is dependent on me. And it's this longing place, longing to be free of that, but also it can show up in kind of a hopelessness or a sadness. They can also, in this space, be more self-indulgent. It's kind of this sense of being willing to bend their internal standards, seeing things as more relative or more gray. And if they have any type of addictive tendencies, whether that's with substances or food or money, that can show up in the stress space too. If the 1, though, the type 1 realizes that they're stressed, they know this is a stressful season, they know this conversation tends to stress them out, this person tends to stress them out, they could instead pause and choose to access the high side of type 4, really reaching out to that number as a resource for them that balances them out. And so on the high side of type 4, the 1 can choose to use that 4 energy to be more in touch with their feelings. Ones are so constricted in their type structure and allowing their feelings to surface. When they have a felt sense of a feeling that's coming up, or have an awareness around an emotion, they tend to kind of constrict down in it. And it's really what shows up for them as this tightness in their throat, sometimes a heaviness in their chest, sometimes like a rigidity in their neck or their jawline. So much so that oftentimes ones have like problems with their jaw, with grinding their teeth or TMJ, some of these symptoms that come up. And it's really that their natural orientation is to constrict their emotions as they're coming up, and that shows up in the felt sense of the body. And so when 4s realize they're stressed, they can instead lean into type 4 and access feelings, choosing to take on practices and rhythms and space with others where they're leaning into and being honest with how they feel, being in touch with that, being introspective, not just in thoughts, but in their feelings as well. And that's one of the tremendous gifts that type 4s offer us, being comfortable with a wide range of emotions and being able to articulate their inner world in that way. And so if type 1s can access that 4 space, that can be a real gift for them in this season of stress. For this resource for type 1s, as they access this 4 space, invites them to acknowledge how they're actually feeling rather than keeping it all together or keeping it locked up tight. And then from there, being able to name what they might need because of those feelings. I'm feeling really overwhelmed. I'm feeling like all the responsibility of my work and my family and the things with the kiddos and all these things, they fall on me. And as I allow myself to experience that, the longing to be free of that responsibility, the sadness around feeling like people don't get it, they don't understand how much I do. If I can allow myself to experience that, then I can be curious of, well, what might I need? Do I need to ask for some help? Do I need to ask my spouse for some more help, my coworker, my boss, whatever it might be? Do I need to establish more rhythms where I'm taking care of myself, where I have some alone time or space to exercise or space to do my hobbies, things that have no value other than joy and being in something that I enjoy to do? Or maybe even having a space where you can consider all the things on your list and ask yourself, do I actually need to be doing all of these things? So much of the drive for the one is meeting these internal standards, whether they're standards set by their environment, expectations on them, or even just the inner critics, shoulds and oughts. But looking at that list of all the things that you accomplish and really being curious about the fact that you might not need to do all of these things. Some of these things you could actually choose to let them go, even though it's not exactly how you want your house to be run, what the best version of you in your work is, what the best version of you in relationship is. But are there some of these things that you could choose, even if just for a season, to let them go for a while and then revisit them later so that there's not so much on your plate? So again, this type 4 introspective space, that can be a real gift for type 1s when they're stressed and they need some support. They need some space around this to recover and consider how they might move forward in a way that's more balanced for them. So again, just a reminder to be kind to yourself, to be compassionate about your experience. It's not about beating yourself up for some of the unhelpful behaviors that you notice, but rather the intention of bringing some awareness around this pattern, and also so that you can give yourself some support. Some of these unhelpful behaviors that we're talking about, they're related to stress. And so rather than beating ourselves up that we're stressed, the invitation is, could we be instead kind to ourselves and noticing, yeah, this isn't a great behavior. I'm just stressed though. And so can we instead provide some support and care for ourselves rather than beating ourselves up about whatever reaction we had? And so taking a moment to pause, to breathe, to check in with your felt sense in that moment. Can you feel your nervous system dysregulated? Can you feel knots in your stomach, or maybe there's a heat in your felt sense or a tightness in your chest? What's happening in your felt sense? and pausing and noticing what's happening so that you can choose how you want to move forward rather than getting caught up in the reactivity of it. And really an invitation to name what you need. As you observe some of these pieces that are happening for you, what is it that you need if you're stressed? Is there a stressor that you can mitigate or remove? Is there some type of support you can add in to balance the triggering aspect of that stressor? Or maybe is there, a need that's not being met, a boundary that you need to put in place, or maybe just an area that you need support. So giving yourself some compassion, because the reality is you're just stressed. That's why these things are happening. Hey friends, if this episode was helpful for you and you want to learn more, the content from this episode is from the Growth and Self-Care Workshop audio that's available for purchase on my website for only $20. The teaching audio is over 4 hours of Enneagram content where I walk you through type-specific stressors and the natural stress response for each type and how we can better manage stress and how we can incorporate practices for self-care based on our type into our everyday life. The teaching audio is a digital download, so you can listen to it on your phone or your computer, and it also comes with a digital workbook. So I really want to encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity or to give it to a friend in this season if you have someone that's coming to mind that has a lot of stress and needs some support to navigate that.